Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. On today's show, we're taking a look at one of my all-time favorites on the original Game Boy, and that's Final Fantasy Legend II. The game itself was developed as the second game in the Japanese Saga series and was retitled here in the West upon release in an attempt to cash in on the ever-popular Final Fantasy name. Even with that, luckily the game beneath the weighty title is strong enough to stand on its own. Final Fantasy Legend II was released here in the US back in 1991, and it became a staple of the Game Boy library for me personally. I took it everywhere with me back when I was a kid. Car trips, doctor's appointments, school recess, you name it. You could have glued the cartridge into the back of my Game Boy and I probably wouldn't have even noticed for at least a couple of years. The plot in Final Fantasy Legend II will have you set off on an adventure across multiple worlds to find your lost father and uncover the mystery of the Magi. See, the Magi is some pretty powerful stuff, and only your vigilance can prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. It's a pretty basic fantasy RPG plot, but it does have a few twists and turns along the way that help to keep it interesting. Its pacing is done pretty well too, and it's good about not holding your hand too much. At the same time, it's also not confusing, and you can almost always figure out what to do next. One thing that's pretty interesting about Final Fantasy Legend II is that you don't have to play as a predefined character. Instead, you actually get to choose from one of 8 starter characters of varying gender and race, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. It's up to you to put together a balanced party of 4 and have them work cohesively. Keep in mind that the game is pretty grind heavy, so you'll be fighting a lot. The combat in the game is based around random encounters, and it happens constantly. Sometimes you can't even walk one step without getting into another battle. It's best to just go ahead and fight too, instead of running, since failing to run will usually end up in your entire party getting wiped out if you're facing a large group of enemies. The combat in the game is done in a first-person style, with attacks having a limited number of uses, but they can be refreshed by staying at an inn. It works the same way with magic too, though spells in most cases have fewer uses overall since they're so much more powerful. You do get a break here and there by running into some NPC characters that will join your party at different times during your quest. These guys and gals are usually super badass and will help you tear through even the toughest areas and bosses with ease. One of my favorite things about Final Fantasy Legend II is that it gives you the ability to save the game pretty much anywhere. This is super convenient for a handheld RPG since you don't have to run around trying to find a save spot before you put it down. Graphically, the game does look good. It's not a stress on the hardware by any means, but it's clean and it is appealing to look at. The enemy and boss designs are great, although I do wish there were more of them to look at in certain spots. You'll see a lot of repeats here. Even with the Game Boy's limited color palette though, the worlds and areas are differentiated nicely. The music is outstanding too, really. Just about every track here is a classic in my opinion. Speaking of which, if you go to one of the bars and use a jukebox, you can actually change the overworld theme for a while too. How cool is that? On a side note, you can pick up the official soundtrack on iTunes, and I highly recommend it, especially considering that it's only a few bucks. Final Fantasy Legend II will always be special to me. Sure, it's not Final Fantasy IV, Chrono Trigger, or Earthbound, but it's still special. It was a game that was with me all the time, and I bet if I added up the total hours I've invested into it, it far surpasses a lot of the other RPGs that I've held on to over the years. It's grindy, it's relatively short, and it isn't even technically a Final Fantasy game, but boy do I love it. It's not just the nostalgia either. I played through it again recently after all these years, and it's still a really enjoyable game with some great tunes, and is a Game Boy defining title to me. I definitely recommend picking this one up if you never got around to playing it back when it came out.
As always, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, subscribing, and of course commenting. And until next time, stay classic.